Inside of today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the best 10 brawlers for every single game mode in Brawl Stars. So these are going to be the brawlers that you want to be playing on literally every single map within that mode. Starting off with Gem Grab, we have Spike. So with these lists, we're going to go for some underrated picks, but also pretty much the best picks every single time. Because of course, there's a few brawlers which are just the best picks every single game mode. So starting off with Spike then. So Spike is really strong on Gem Grab in particular. It's really easy to win lane when using a vision gear, and also his brand new mythic gear allows him just to really dominate on every single Gem Grab one. Penny is an insane brawler in the meta, but mainly on Gem Grab, because with Penny you can play her as an aggro lane or in the middle. She's super versatile, and that's why she's so easy to push in Gem Grab. Next up we have Crow. So Crow is pretty much good on every single Gem Grab map. If I was to pick a favorite, probably double swoosh. But the reason why he's so good, he's really good with his slow and toxin gadget, being able to also counter the tankier brawlers. He's able to scout a lot of the grassy maps with his poison, and also his jump is super valuable when trying to take down the gem carrier. So next up we have Otis. So Otis is really strong everywhere right now in the meta, but mainly on Gem Grab, because with Gem Grab, especially in the draft, you can easily pick him at the start of the draft phase, and then if, for example, you have to counter certain tanks with other brawlers, you can easily put Otis as a mid even. So he's super versatile on every single map and in every way. And lastly, for Gem Grab, we have Tara. So Tara isn't the strongest brawler within the meta, but I think this is more so of an underrated pick. If I was looking to push Tara in particular, because of course you have to push every single brawler, it would definitely be Gem Grab. She can be somewhat of an underrated lane on Gem Grab. Also, for other honorable mentions, we have pretty much all of the tanks like Sam, Ash, Buster, and Buzz. They're insane on Gem Grab, especially down the lane. And also, of course, Janet. She's just insane everywhere. So now we're moving on to Brawl, and starting off with, of course, the queen of Brawl, or the best brawler in Brawl by far. It's B. So the reason why B is so good, because she can win against every single mid on Brawl. But not only that, a lot of times you see a lot tankier options, especially when it comes down to ladder. See a lot of Poco double tank, and B can literally 1v3 against these brawlers. She's absolutely insane. By far her best game mode, and always has been. So next up for Brawl, we have Chester. So Chester is falling down in the meta a little bit. His best game mode is definitely Brawl, because again, just so many tanky options, and Chester can absolutely shred them. Also on the more grassier maps, you can use the vision gear with him and just get insane value. His supers will really help you score in Brawl as well. So next up we have Buster inside of Brawl, and this is the game mode which he's just completely broken on. He's still really insane, especially on grassy maps and with those small choke points like center stage, for example. He just completely runs the meta on that map. But any map with a bit of grass or a little bit of coverage, Buster's going to be insane. Of course, his super helps you push up, and then just to clean things up, his gadget is just so easy to defend with, but also to score once you shoot and then gadget at the same time. It's just unstoppable. So next up we have Griff. So Griff by no means is really OP in the meta right now. He's just decent everywhere, but within ladder, he's actually pretty consistent in Brawl. His gadget allows you to break open a lot of key walls, especially maps like Super Beach, also Beach Ball and Sunny Soccer, really strong with those gadgets. But again, those tanky brawlers got to be really scared. You've always got to have one of those brawlers in your composition, so that's why Griff is always going to get value. And even if you don't face tanky brawlers, his star power allows you to get a lot of pressure. And lastly for Brawl then, we have Ruffs. So Ruffs, again, another brawler where his super and just being able to break open walls is just so incredibly broken on Brawl. And that's why he's so strong, right? Just being able to break open the map the way you want it to. That's why Ruffs is really strong and just good with everything in your composition. And, you know, even if you face off against tanks, you might not have the best DPS, but they're just going to feed you those supers even more and break open the map even more. There's other honorable mentions as well. You know, Max. Everyone knows Max is absolutely insane on Brawl. Just probably one of the best brawlers, even though I've not included it in the top 5. You've got Ash and Surge as well that just completely run it down on Brawl. So now moving on to Bounty. The first one, the golden pick for sure has to be Grom. Everyone knows how strong Grom is in the meta, but this is the perfect game mode for him, because there's a lot less aggro brawlers and still you're a lot less vulnerable to them because there's a lot of walls. So Grom's just going to dominate literally every single Bounty map. He's the #1 pick for me. Next up we have Sprout. So Sprout, you really struggle to push him outside of Knockout and Bounty, so that's why I put him in the top 5 for Bounty, because he's definitely a really strong brawler, especially considering throws are just so strong in Bounty. He's going to be really good. There's going to be a lot of squishy brawlers for him to feed off, and even if you face off against those aggro brawlers, it should be pretty easy to cycle your walls, especially with a super gear. So next up in Bounty we have Tick. So there's 3 throwers already on my top 5, because throwers are pretty difficult to push elsewhere. Maybe in Power League you can draft them a lot easier, but when it comes down to ladder, Now, throwers are pretty suspect to a lot of those aggro brawlers, but Tick, you can easily get away with playing it Tick passively in Bounty. He's pretty much good against everything, and then eventually once those aggro brawlers start coming towards you, you have your super and also your gadget to defend you a little bit. So next up for Bounty, we have Nanny. So Nanny is just incredibly broken on about half of the Bounty maps. Those maps like Shooting Star, Hideout, and also Dry Season. She's just so incredibly strong. A lot of those brawlers are going to be either like the sharpshooters like Brock, Piper, who Nanny just completely wreck, or against the throwers. Like Nanny's still actually pretty decent against throwers because of the peep. A lot of times they're squishier, so pretty easy to take down if you get hit onto them. And lastly for Bounty then we have Jean. So Jean is definitely a really strong brawler within Bounty because he's good with everything. Bounty is pretty passive, so even if you face off against tanky brawlers, you can get away with it with Jean, but slowly you can chip away. They'll feed your super as well, so it's just good with everything, especially when you're looking to pressure the enemy team. Magic Puffs is really going to help you out. So also got honorable mentions as well, by the way. We have the likes of Penny and also Eve, which are pretty good everywhere when it comes down to Bounty. And then also on a few maps like Canal Grande, Layer Cake, and Temple Ruins, you can use those tanky options like Carl, also Buster and Ash and Buzz. All of them pretty strong when it comes down to those grassy maps. Okay, so now moving on to Heist. So starting off with the golden pick for me in Heist, I always go towards an 8-bit. 8-bit is absolutely insane on every Heist map, except for Pit Stop, of course. Gets countered a little bit too easily there, but maps like Safe Zone, for example, he's just gonna absolutely wreck everyone, especially with the boosted booster. All you need to do is just get a clean line of sight to the safe once, and you'll be able to absolutely shred the safe to like 50% HP if you get that extra credits and a couple more pieces of ammo. It's just GG's. So 8-bit is just a king in terms of damage. So next up in Heist, we have Brock. So again, another brawler which you can pretty much use everywhere. Maybe Pit Stop, you probably can't, but still I've seen a few people running there. But anyways, Brock is just really consistent on Heist. Of course, it does so much damage onto the high safe with the 4th rocket and incendiary built in together. Not only that, his wall breaks are just really essential to allowing you and your teammates to push up the map a lot easier, especially on maps where maybe the wall, whether there's a wall in front of a safe, it just allows for easy access. So next up for Heist, we have Colette. So Colette has always been the best in Heist, one of the best brawlers for sure. She's literally so incredibly strong on every single Heist map, probably except for Pit Stop, because of course you're going to run into quite a few tanky brawlers often, so of course you can feed a super from that, but most of the time you just get insane damage onto the safe with that super, and then once you return you can easily start cycling it, especially with the gadget and the star power. Next up for Heist, we have Daryl. So Daryl has always been the king of Heist, one of the best brawlers easily. He's like that tank hybrid which allows you to take down other brawlers that are pretty good on Heist, like Brock for example. But not only that, he's just constant pressure. You just cycle your rolls so easily, and that constant pressure really forces your enemies back to pinch you. And like I said, he's always like the golden pick on maps like Pit Stop. And lastly for Heist, we have Lola. So it's pretty plain and simple with Lola as well. Just like 8-bit, she just does so much damage. It's pretty easy to play Lola as a lane or a mid as well when it comes down to Heist. She just shreds tanks as well. And not only that, we have some other honorable mentions as well. When I'm looking to push in Heist, there's a few other underrated brawlers like Dynamite, for example. Now he's even more meta when it comes down to Heist. It's pretty easy to push consistently when it comes down to Heist, as long as you've got something to back him up. Also the likes of Sam. And there's a lot of other brawlers who can go in Heist. Those tanky options are pretty easy to play right now. So now we're moving on to Knockout. So the best brawler in Knockout for me, especially on ladder, has to be Bo, unfortunately. So Bo is just the king of cheesy strategies in Knockout. Literally everyone is playing Bo in Knockout. I would say 95% of my games is just filled of Bo with totem cheesy strategies with Grey, Tara, Mortis, tankier brawlers. Just pair anyone with a Bo, basically, Nanny as well, and it's going to be 3 cups for you. So next up for Knockout, we have Grey. So Grey is insane everywhere right now, but I think Knockout is his best game mode, mainly because in Knockout you can easily just pick on a target which is pretty weak and just teleport straight onto them. So that's why I feel like Grey has to be one of the best brawlers within this game mode. So next up we have Mandy. So Mandy is actually one of the best brawlers within Knockout, probably what the only game mode she really thrives in right now. It's just really easy to play passive and use the range to your advantage, and then if you eventually get up your super, just 1 kill with it just means the world, because if you can get into a 3v2 scenario, 95% of the time you end up winning those, especially on those really long range maps like Out in the Open, Gold Arm Gorge, Bells of Rock. She's always a really strong pick there. So next up in Knockout we have Grom. So Grom, I tried to stay away from including him too many times, but I just had to. Bounty and Knockout, it's his playground. It's so easy for him to just completely dominate in this game mode. Even against the tankier options, it's just so easy to play. The reason why it's so good because the pressure you can get with a throw-in knockout, especially Grom, is just so insane. If you can ping them back to spawn, a lot of times, even if you're not hitting shots all of the time, just pinning them back enough just gives you control of the map, and a lot of times you just end up winning from the control alone. And lastly, we're moving on to Gus. And so Gus is just absolutely insane on knockout, just like any other passive game mode or map. It's just going to get so much insane value. Just being able to eventually build up the ghost, build up the super. Just one super can literally win you the round with Gus. So also honorable mentions as well, just missing out the likes of G, Eve and Brock. So all of these brawlers are just good into literally everything. So yeah, there's a lot of brawlers you can use in knockout. So now moving on to hot zones. So we have the best brawler in hot zone by far for me. It has to be Poco. He gets value on literally every single hot zone map. If you're a good Poco, you can easily stay on a zone for so long. You know, there's no question to it. You get an easy heal with your tuning fork gadget. You get easy heals when the opponent constantly running up to you, feeding your supers. Not only that, Screeching Solo can help keep the enemy team really weak as well. I just think it's such a consistent brawler on this game mode. It's just literally free trophies. So next up in hot zone, we have Meg. So Meg is probably the most annoying brawler to face off against in a hot zone meta. I would say every single time I end up banning Meg in hot zone because of how strong she is. But anyways, Meg, insane literally everywhere in every single hot zone map. Probably except for maybe Split because there are a lot of tankier brawlers. But once you can start charging and cycling it up your mech over and over again, there's not many brawlers that can actually deal with her, especially on maps like Ring of Fire, Open Zone and Dueling Beetles. She's like the best brawler there by far. So next up with the best brawlers in hot zone, we have Stu. So Stu's best game mode is easily hot zone, and right now he definitely fits the meta. His speed zone turret is just really strong. Just being able to dash around easily with gas heal, just get so much pressure and stay onto the zone because of the healing. It's just essential for him. So especially on maps like Dueling Beetles, Ring of Fire, Open Zone, literally all the Power League maps, he's super strong on that map. The only brawlers you gotta be careful of with Stu, of course, those spawners. So next up, moving on to Lou. Then so Lou, of course, it's hot zone. He's always been really strong in the hot zone meta, but I feel like right now it's definitely in a really underrated period of the game because it only takes 6 shots to get his super pack. So once an opponent or a tank is frozen, for example, you only need 2 pieces of ammo to cycle that super again, and it just becomes impossible for the opponents to get out of the spawn trap when you're constantly cycling these supers over and over again. You know, the first one can sometimes take a little while to get, but once you start cycling it becomes so strong. And lastly, for hot zone, we have Amber. So Amber's best game mode again has always been hot zone. It's pretty easy to get a lot of control with her, especially once you get her super. It's pretty easy to lock onto a target, and then also on certain maps in hot zone, it's really easy just to throw your super into a certain lane and then force the opponents to go down the other 2 lanes. It just leads to really easy funneling and a really easy spawn trap. So especially on maps like Dueling Beetle, Ring of Fire, it's super easy to keep control with Amber. Also moving on to the other underrated picks. Well, not really underrated. Everyone knows these brawlers are good on this game mode. You know, like Penny, Gus, for example. The likes of course, Janet as well. Just so many of the meta brawlers are really good on hot zone. Alright guys, it's going to be it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed that one. Let me know what you think of these types of videos and what other informative videos you want me to make. I want to make these as much as possible. So hopefully these types of videos really help you guys out in pushing. Of course, I could go into way more detail, but this was just really quick ones off the top of my head. Of course, it takes a little time to get the gameplay, but overall, these videos are good fun. So yeah, it's going to be it for today's video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.